Okay, you may have heard these two different terms, top-down and bottom-up, to refer to different ways that you can actually self-regulate your nervous system. First of all, before we get into this video, let me just say that regulating a dysregulated nervous system is one of the most searched for things on YouTube in this space right now. Our video that is on this channel called How to Reset a Dysregulated Nervous System in Under 60 Seconds is by far the most popular video. And in that video, I give some explanation for what it means really for your nervous system to be dysregulated, what causes it, and how you can start to shift it back. So in this video, we're going to talk about two different fundamental approaches, those being known as top-down, or using your mind and brain to create some regulation in the system, versus bottom-up, or using our body and our senses, our felt sense or somatic experience to create regulation and normality in the nervous system. I'm Ben Ahrens, co-founder of Reorigin, where we teach you how to retrain your brain to reclaim your health. And in this video, we're going to get deep into the difference between top-down, bottom-up. I'll share some examples and how ultimately the best approach might be a combined one, where we are both using the body and the brain to re-regulate the nervous system. Now, let me just say before we even jump in here that one of the unique things about brain retraining and certain brain retraining protocols, like the kind that we teach at Reorigin, and for those of you new to this channel, Reorigin is a science-based brain retraining program and community that also offers coaching. You can check it out at re-origin.com, and we go deep into how to use techniques like these and certain protocols to establish self-management to the system. A wise doctor, mentor of mine, and someone who actually helped formulate the Reorigin program once said, "The role of any physician or practitioner should not be to perpetually manage sick patients. Instead, it should be to reestablish their own ability to self-manage and self-heal." And the reason I found this statement so empowering and impactful is because what it really implies is that we do have the ability to self-manage. We do have the ability to self-heal. And if you've ever had a wound, a cut, a bruise, or a scrape on your skin and that wound is now gone, that's just simply proof that your body does heal itself. Similarly, the nervous system is actually designed to self-regulate. We go into, in that other video on how to reset your dysregulated nervous system, the difference between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic in more detail, but for our purposes here, we can just understand that when we're in the sympathetic response, that's what we associate with fight or flight. Our body's resources are sort of shunted to the exterior to mobilize action in acute circumstances. So this is great for acute circumstances, but oftentimes what can happen is many of us find ourselves feeling overwhelmed, maybe bombarded by a lot of information, tired and wired, and we find that we sort of get stuck in that tired and wired state, in that sympathetic state. Now, the counter side of the nervous system is what's known as the parasympathetic. And this one you can think of the word parachute, meaning it's meant to slow you down and return you to baseline. And while neither of these is good or bad, both of them are essential. The parasympathetic state, also known as rest and digest, is ultimately where we want to be able to settle and spend the majority of our time. When we're in that state, our body feels and becomes much more resourced. All of the resources that would be applied toward fight or flight are now able to be used for things like calming functions, digestion, procreation, and long-term healing and recovery. This also tends to coincide with just feeling more even keel. So how do we shift there? If we find that we're spending more time than is desirable or more time than is beneficial in that sympathetic state, how can we use these top-down and bottom-up approaches to shift the gears a little bit more smoothly and find ourselves in that parasympathetic state more often of the time? Well, first let's give some examples of what these approaches are, starting with the top-down. So like the name implies, a top-down approach to self-regulation means that you are starting with what's going on up here. So this can be done using our mind, using our brain, and one of the things that can help calm us down if we're feeling anxious or feeling overwhelmed or tired and wired is simply using our rational mind to understand that discomfort does not equal danger. Now that might sound intuitive, but oftentimes the brain, the primitive brain, can learn to associate feelings of discomfort, whether emotions, thoughts, or even physical sensations of symptoms, with a feeling of being under threat. And when the brain has learned to make that association, then it will mount the threat response, also known as that sympathetic response. And so simply by taking a step back, maybe taking a deep breath, and this is where that bottom up starts to come in, but for a moment, let's just say taking a step back and simply reminding ourselves of what's actually going on, that even feelings like anxiety or strong emotions are simply chemicals that are working their way through the system. And just like caffeine is a chemical that will alter our physiology, maybe give us an elevated heart rate and some sweaty palms for a bit, just like that chemical works its way through and out of our system, so too can feelings of agitation, of despair, of overwhelm or anxiety also flow through and out of us if we allow them to. And one of the ways to allow these feelings to move where they might otherwise get stuck is by actually just activating what's known as the prefrontal cortex, which is the rational part of the brain, and just reminding ourselves discomfort does not equal danger. What I'm feeling are simply chemical responses going through my system, and I have the ability to choose to relax and let go. So by doing this, we kind of disengage the mind, the ruminating mind, which might not necessarily be the cause of the sensations, but it can certainly contribute to them staying there. So by doing this, we sort of disengage, we activate that prefrontal. It actually also reduces activity in the limbic brain, which is the emotional center of the brain that can get stuck in rumination, or what's known as the default mode network. And when that gets quieted down, we start to feel a bit more relaxed, and then things can indeed flow through us. Now, I mentioned that sometimes we're reacting to thoughts or emotions, but sometimes it's the sensations themselves. And in this case, bottom-up approaches then really start with the body, with the senses. And one of the easiest ways to implement a bottom-up approach is, like I already alluded to before, it's deep breathing, slow, deliberate breathing. One of the ways that was recommended at UCSF by many studies that have been done there, they actually found that the best breathing technique is, of course, the one that works for you, but generally as a principle, the ones that will work best across the board are ones that include a soft inhalation into the belly, followed by a long, slow exhale of about 6 to 8 seconds. And one of the ways that you can slow down your exhale consciously as you're learning is by pursing your lips together like you're going to whistle and just exhaling in that manner for 6 to 8 seconds. So just taking a few deep breaths like that is one way to change your physiology and change your experience of symptoms or uncomfortable sensations simply by changing how your body feels and where your awareness is going in that moment. Other ways include something known as progressive muscle relaxation, and we'll have a bunch more videos coming online on this channel, so if you haven't subscribed yet, do so now, because we're going to include a lot of these types of techniques, but one of them is basically the idea of creating a little bit of contraction or resistance in your muscles, followed by release and exhalation. When we do this, it almost functions like a little stepladder that brings us down into deeper states of relaxation. Another way to use a bottom-up approach is to simply feel yourself grounded into your physical space. Now, I like to do this by taking my shoes off and feeling my feet planted on the floor. I've actually done that just now. I also like to feel my bottom connected with the seat and feel how supportive that feels. When you do this again, you're providing a felt sense of support from your physical body. And lastly, one of my favorite bottom-up approaches is movement, particularly creating slow circular movements in any of our joints. So we can do this just starting with the wrists, then the elbows, shoulders, but these types of circular movements that you've probably done in gym class back in the day, including neck rolls, things like that, can actually have a really interesting effect on the feeling of being stuck. Sometimes when we feel stuck, all we need to do is actually start wiggling and moving our body to send a new message back to the brain, where the brain starts to realize, oh my God, I can't be stuck because I'm in motion. This same technique is actually used a lot with business and conversations. It's even mentioned that oftentimes people would get together for business meetings. If they were trying to close a new client, for instance, they would actually take them for a walk in the park, because subconsciously going for a walk and taking steps feeds back to the brain that you're in forward motion. So when people would do that together with someone that they were trying to gain as a new client, for instance, they're trying to basically give them the felt sense that they're walking in lockstep together, and together they're moving forward. So these are just some interesting things that we can do from a bottom-up sense. We can go for a walk to give ourselves that sense of forward movement. We can move our joints to feel like there's a range of motion, like we're not stuck. We can take those deep breaths with the long, slow exhales, and we can feel our feet planted on the floor to know that we are supported. Now, personally, as I mentioned, I would really advocate a combined approach. Why only limit ourselves to just using the mind or just using the top down? We can also use bottom up. Think of this like building a tunnel from both sides where they actually meet in the middle, and it's built far more efficiently when those calculations are made correctly. But in this case, it's actually quite easy to do. The next time you feel yourself or find yourself feeling overwhelmed or maybe ruminating on a certain situation or feeling, even if that feeling is physical discomfort, say a particular symptom, you can actually take a step back, remind yourself, even say the words, discomfort does not equal danger. You can take some deep breaths, and you can practice any one of these techniques. So if you want to go deeper into these types of techniques, if you want to actually put this into a process and a protocol that you can practice throughout the day, then go to reorigin.com, where we have a 28-day program that really brings you up to speed, gives you all of the ins and outs of understanding the role of the brain in various chronic conditions like chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, chemical sensitivities, overwhelm, anxiety, and depression, all very common experiences in this day and age, unfortunately. But these are things that, fortunately, your brain and body have an incredible capacity to improve, and you can be the driver of that improvement. So share any questions or comments below. Did you find this helpful? Does this make sense to you? Are you scratching your head asking, what is going on here? What are these top-down and bottom-up approaches? I really appreciate your feedback. I read all of the comments. I love hearing from you, and I will see you in a future video.